But getting into this next segment, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, Daily Ravens content. This is the third segment of the Truzz the Bank podcast. And what we're going to talk about is the safety position because we feel like, or at least I feel like, it's a very interesting spot on the Ravens roster. It's different from center, right tackle, wide receiver, and edge, where it's like, yeah, we need that. Like, that's a hole. Assuming Orlando Brown gets traded, then right tackle's a hole. But other than that, we need a center. We need somebody that can snap the football. We need somebody that can catch the ball. We got that with Sammy Watkins, so how much of a hole is it now? It's a smaller hole. But edge rusher, we don't have one on the roster. But safeties is the most unique one because we don't have a free safety. Deshone, Elliott, and Chuck Clark are both strong safeties in a sense. The benefit is the Ravens run a hybrid, defense with ton of different fronts and looks that Wink Martindale is able to give. So, having two, heavy hitting, kind of traditional box safeties can work with the Ravens system. But do the Ravens need to go after another safety? We signed Geno Stone to a 1-year deal. But there are some good safeties that are available. Most notoriously, I've seen it in a couple of mock drafts. I don't have them in my mock draft, but Trevon, I can't say his last name. I'm going to say Morig out of TCU. He's a beast. There's a guy at UCF who I had in my last mock draft. There's a lot of free safeties that are available that'll be able to be playmakers. But is that enough of a need for the Ravens to draft? Now, there's also some free agents that the Ravens could go after. But, do we need one? I feel like we'd be good if we don't get one. But, obviously, if you bring in a guy, you look at what Eric Weddle did for the Ravens defense. It was so much more than Earl Thomas. But, Eric Weddle made the defense click.
It was an upgrade of IQ with Eric Weddle. He was a real leader. He's a real captain in that backfield. And so it's a tricky question. I'm gonna put it like this: if the Ravens were to add a corner like Rashad Breeland or a CJ Jackson, I wouldn't mind moving a injury-prone Tavon Young or Jimmy Smith to the free safety. Reason I say move those two guys back there because there is going to be limited. It's going to be limited contact. If anything, they are the safety nets. Jimmy Smith still has a good knack of being around the ball. He still has decent enough speed to cover tight ends and number two wide receivers. Tavon Young, before he started becoming injury prone, he was one of the best nickelback corners. So if you put one of those two guys, in the free safety, in the center field, I feel like, I'm not going to say it's going to be 4 interceptions a game, but I can at least see 1 to 2 interceptions, out of those two guys in the free safety world. You can get real creative, bring Chuck Clark down as an outside linebacker, just something like how the Chargers did us when Lamar Jackson first time getting into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Then you can have Deshone Elliott play that strong. Because, at University of Texas, Deshone Elliott did play free safety. I'm not going to say he's just exactly a box guy. I'm going to say that's Wink Martindale style. In Deshone, you get a versatile, angry, aggressive, Legion of Boom, Cam Chancellor type of guy, out of him. So I feel like he still can. I feel like he still can play center field. Obviously, there was a lot of miscommunication way too many times between Chuck Clark and Deshone. So something has to give. So I feel like if you put a veteran back there like a Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young has good IQ. It will help him with his longevity to keep him in a 16-game, 17-game season. So I feel like instead of bringing on a new safety, let's bring in the corner like Rashad Breeland or CJ Jackson, one of those type of guys, or maybe an AJ Bowie. So
yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. If you look at what the Ravens do, they play a ton of press, they play a ton of man coverage, and a lot of times, I'm gonna piggyback off of your idea and expand upon it. But a lot of times, safeties struggle in man coverage. I mean, they typically play zone. You run cover 2 man, you run cover 1. Like, in general, a safety is expecting to play zone. They can play man every once in a while, but they're hoping they're up against a tight end. But with Ravens, you see Chuck Clark matched up against, wide receiver 2s, and they get beat because they struggle. So if the Ravens were to get another cornerback or just a secondary piece and just play them, at free safety, I mean, you come out in nickel, in dime packages where you've got extra, secondary members in the linebacking core, and you start blitzing them because we all know Wink loves to blitz. You can blitz Deshone Elliott. I think he had 2 sacks last year. Mm-hmm. That type of thing. You send one of them on a blitz, and then, like you brought up, Joshua, maybe you just have Tavon Young play a safety in certain packages, or you have Jimmy Smith playing safety, but it's not a true safety. It's just playing where the safety would play, but in reality, they're just playing man coverage, which they know how to do. So that could be something where the Ravens do, where honestly, they wouldn't even have to add anybody in particular. Like, I don't think they'd have to go out and make a signing, but they could, draft somebody late. I had somebody in my mock draft, cannot remember his name whatsoever. And he was I had him, I think it was day 3, and he was out of Michigan State. Okay. And he was like a heavy man-to-man corner. I think he was 6 foot, 6'1", something like that. Like, that's the type of guy where, you draft a guy where it's like, all right, yeah, they play man-to-man coverage. Well, he could be your 5th, 6th secondary member to cover, the wide receiver 4. He could do that. So the Ravens could get somebody in the draft where it's like, maybe it's not a safe. Maybe I'm going to have to start implementing that on my mock draft Mondays is drafting cornerbacks to just play the man coverage. Don't ever you could put them out there and have them play zone, but I think that's an interesting idea where they don't add a safety, but they add a secondary piece that would slide into the safety position, because that would allow the Ravens, one, to have more depth at corner, which is more of a need because, like you brought up, Tavon Young, Jimmy Smith, very injury prone. But if we had another guy that could fill in after that, a while back we drafted Iman Lewis Marshall. Yeah. Didn't pan out so great. But you could take, they really struggle with drafting corners not in the first round. Maurice Kennedy is another one. Man, Ravens got to develop their corners too.
Like Anthony Avery, he started playing last year, I would say was one of his better years. And in the first couple of years, Marlon Brown did vouch for him, but at the same time, he was getting burnt every now and then. But last year, he actually was sticking with, the wide receiver number 2s. He was coming up, making tackles, got a couple pass deflections here and there. So he was doing better. He was actually catching up with the game. And you know what? I feel like, with the Ravens way, we don't help these guys develop, because college, every level it gets faster. High school, it's like mid fast. Then you get to college, you turn it up just a little more. As soon as you get drafted, you're in the NFL, or you're undrafted, whatever the case may be. You picked up, signed up, it's turned up. The nozzle's off, and you have to learn. So yes, granted, you didn't learn, the route tree from being 9 years old. You didn't learn different coverages from being 12 years old. But the exotic and the whole crazy names start getting wilder when you get into the NFL, and you have to start picking up on things. Because guess what? You think you may be the smartest man on the field. If someone out there smarter than you, and you're going to have to step your game up. That's why I'm saying these athletes of today, it's more raw talent, less IQ.
I think, you want to look at raw talent, less IQ. There's a lot of Ravens fans, including myself, have mocked the Ravens in Gregory Rousseau, who is no IQ, literally 0 IQ. I believe he's played the position for 1 year, edge rusher. He was a wide receiver, free safety, and now he's a defensive lineman. And it's like, I think he had 8 sacks, but it's like he has no skill, no ability. But teams are like, wow, this guy could be a first-round guy. We get this guy a spin move. We get him if he can develop a bull rush, he'd be so good. And the draft is so much about prospecting these guys. It's very rare. It's almost becoming the NBA, where the NBA and the draft is like it's all one and done guys. Where in college it's like, for example, Zaire Williams out of Stanford. Sorry, I'm a Stanford fan. I bring up the guys easier out of Stanford. A guy who was prospected to go maybe top 10, and I'm like watching him at Stanford. It was like, this guy isn't their best player. I think he was coming off the bench, and it's like, oh yeah, he's top 10 pick, and I'm like, wow, okay, So it's all about, in the NBA, it's all about prospecting talent. How good could this guy be? At the safety position, it's like, you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, this guy's just a freak athlete. Does he have any ball skills? No. Does he have, instincts to play the safety position? No. But he could. If we teach him that, like, he'll become that. And it's so much more like that, where like the NBA, where it's like, oh, wow, this guy's just a crazy athlete, a lot of potential. We see it. Now, a lot of the times, it's a lot more uncommon where it's like, oh, yeah, this guy's a 4-year starter at safety. He played all of his games. He had a long career. It's like, no, it's like, yeah, he was a backup at Alabama, and then he was a starter for 1 year. Now he's getting drafted. Like, that's how it happens because, they just play 1 year, and the NFL's like, okay, we see the potential. We can draft that and develop it. Much more rare that we get the guys that, have more experience. So I think you're totally right on that. And I think that's why the Ravens shouldn't draft kind of a safety, is just because they won't be able to develop him and he won't be able to make that immediate impact. Whereas at least a corner, you can tell when a corner has some man-to-man coverage skills and things like that. Where safety is much harder to diagnose because the coverage schemes in college are so bad. Like there's just always people open. At least man coverage, you can just see here's a one-on-one, his moves. How does he fare? So, yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. And, man, you're totally right with, like, the no IQ.
I'm going to put it like this. Patrick Queen, you know, I'm not going to say he's the second coming to Ray Lewis, but does he have big cleats to fill? Of course. If y'all really watch the games, yes, he did rack up over 100 tackles. With that missed training camp, he was going off of nothing but talent and pure instinct. Yeah. There was a lot of times there was missed assignments, and there was a lot of times where we did see him on his ass. If you guys did not see Patrick Queen on his ass, you did not watch the football game in total. Because I watched it. Malik Harrison. Now I would say his IQ level is a little more better than Patrick Queen, because he's a coverage linebacker. So I think his IQ level would be a little higher. And for Malik Harrison, he took on fullbacks and offensive linemen too. You heard the boom, y'all. I mean, they had no fans in the stadium. So when y'all heard the hits, y'all heard the hits. When he got Derrick Henry, y'all heard the hit. So, I'm not going to say should Malik Harrison play. Should he start over Patrick Queen? No. But do I feel like he should be getting equal amount of time? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, those dudes were running around. Oftentimes it looked like, they were a chicken with their heads cut off. But, with the Ravens and luckily having training camp will help with developing those young guys. It's going to be very exciting. But I'm going to say no to drafting a safety unless somebody really good falls. I mean, if you're saying, for example, last year I was not on the draft or running back train, but I had J.K. Dobbins as my number one running back in the draft class. And all of a sudden I saw him sitting there and I was like, wait a minute, my whole plan. I'm like, you got to draft JK. They drafted JK. Look how it turned out. If somebody that good falls to you, you can draft him. If the safety out of UCF, can't remember his name. Sorry. I got to get my name more familiar with the non-first round players. If he falls and it's like the third round, I'd be okay with taking that because he's a second round talent.
The Ravens way.
Yes, exactly. Best player available. Like as long as it's not, a quarterback, when you have a quarterback, they take the best player available. So I think that's what the Ravens will implement. I don't think that they'll be like specifically targeting us any certain corners or safeties, but I think if they have them and they see one fall and they're like, we really like this guy, I think they'll take him at that spot. But I don't know. Is there anything else you got on the safety position?
No, I definitely feel like we don't need to draft another safety. If anything, I would say just listen. Let's add to our cornerback depth, and let Wayne do what he do, scheme up, blitz, send the house. I feel like we add another corner and scheme it up in a way, we're gonna be fine. That front seven, the back seven saved our asses towards the end of the season. So if you add someone onto that back seven, it's not a cry for help, but it's a addition that's going to make us even better. So I say no. I say no to a safety.
Yeah. So Ravens fans, if you disagree, let us know in the comment section down below. If you're listening on the podcast, you can't really comment on the podcast, but you can rate and review, give us 5 stars, that kind of stuff. But you can come over to the YouTube video and you can comment your thoughts and opinion, or comment it on our account's Twitter, at Truzz the Bank on Twitter. So go check out TTB Ravens Media on YouTube. Go check out the podcast if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe for daily Ravens content. And we'll see all of you again for the Truzz the Bank podcast next week. But then, on the YouTube channel, I'll see all of you again tomorrow.